Sorry,
Ow.
Dave. Sorry, I
I'm
didn't mean to do that.
sensitive.
How's it going, buddy? Welcome, everybody, to the Omniverse Comics Guide podcast. Dave Molyneux, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Eric and Tony.
What? What? Okay. Is it because I mispronounce your name that you
Uh,
mispronounce mine?
yes.
How do I proproperly say it
No, I
then?
don't want you to say it properly.
Why? I told you it's because of the hockey players that are in Canada.
So
They've
they
got
pronounce.
this.
How do they pronounce it? How do you say it again?
I say Dave
Molyneux.
Molyneux.
It's
So, because there's like a hockey player, Mario Lemieux, and it has
oh. Well,
the
no, that
U.
bit's right.
Yes.
It's the stress on the mole, not the you. New.
So how do we properly address you? We're not gonna know.
It's pronounced merengue.
Okay, Dave Merengue,
Oh,
and I'm
thank you.
Eric Antoni. Very good, perfect. Let's carry on, shall we?
Eric Antonai.
So, for people who are wondering why we're talking about pronunciation names, it's because we came here to talk about some of our favorite Spider-Man stories, villain-centric.
Yeah.
Trying to make it villain-centric. Was it easy for you to come up with your five? Because you're a very well-read Spider-Man fan. I am as well, but I was blanking.
It's weird because like there's a lot of Spider-Man villains I like, and then you think like, okay, what story really sums them up? Because that's the thing. It's the Bring on the Bad Guys episode, so we've only done one or two of these before, haven't we? I think, but it tends to be the focus on so it's focused on the villains and just the best story of that villain that makes you love that character. But it's funny because like even then I was trying to think like, do I like the Vulture? Do I like the Rhino? So
Yeah.
but I like Spider-Man. It's like I don't want without wanting to spoil too much, but I really love Ultimate Spider-Man. But I
Me
realized
too.
I love Ultimate Spider-Man more than the villains. If I was going to pick any villains, it wouldn't be the Ultimate version. So I haven't chosen any of that. But I love that series. So
I did. I went that
oh,
route.
you did. Oh,
I
I'm
did.
intrigued.
Yeah, because in the same vein, like there's certain villains that are I'm trying to be like either I'm going to tell what I want to pick the stories I want to pick, or what would be a good unselfish way to recommend something to somebody to read, right? And you're thinking like there's probably some villains who I don't like, but if you're new to Spider-Man, that's probably a good place to start.
Okay.
How could I not recommend that? So then I was trying to be like, yeah, but I don't know if I really care for that villain here, but I do like them better there.
Okay.
So I tried to combine.
Oh, that's made me think of a good one now. Damn it.
I'm interested to. There's one that's a weird one that I did one kind
love a
of
weird
weird one.
Mm-hmm.
You got a weird one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Hopefully we don't have too much crossover because I think when it comes to Spider-Man, we have, I think, similar tastes in that regard. Like
We
we
do.
love the character. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, did you do any like easy, not to spoil, but again, any easy, obvious lobs? Because there are a couple where you're just like, duh.
Yeah, one.
Okay. Okay, cool. Whose turn is it?
You, I think.
Mine.
Hmm.
Okay, let me get my list. My phone's here. I'm looking down at my phone, everybody. I'm not ignoring Dave. It's the list for the show.
So, listen to me. I exist.
Where did
Buy
I?
me
Oh,
flowers.
there. All right. Did you re-listen to our Spider-Man starter kit by chance episode? I didn't get a chance to.
No.
Okay.
Didn't occur to me.
Okay. So we have done a Spider-Man starter kit episode that was the inspiration for the Batman one on the Omniverse, but the Spider-Man starter kit was on our old show where we would podcast. It still exists, but you can find those episodes in the Cave of Solitude.
Maybe should we rerun it? Do you think we'll figure that out?
We could. We'll figure
If
that out.
people want it, let
We
us
could.
know, and we'll.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's available, right? Just look up Cave of Solitude. Me and Dave are there as well. But right now on the Omniverse Comics Guide, we're gonna give you our Spider-Man. Bring on the bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
So, one that I probably picked on the starter kit, I'm gonna make it my first pick for this one, and it is from the J.M. Straczynski run.
Oh, okay.
The very beginning of it. It's the Coming Home storyline. Amazing Spider-Man issues 30 to 35, and the villain in this case is Moreland.
Uh-huh.
Not the most famous or infamous Spider-Man villain of all time. There's some very obvious ones that show up in the movies frequently, but in this case, this was his first appearance, right?
Yeah,
Moreland,
yeah, that's the story that
was
introduced him.
fresh character.
Uh-huh.
And I really liked the introduction of this Ezekiel guy in Peter's life. I'm getting into the story like everybody knows it. So this is a great starting point for anyone who wants to get into Spider-Man in a way. I mean, it doesn't end the greatest, but it's a great series of stories along the way that do some different things with Spider-Man. And what's also great about it, it's John Romita Jr., my favorite Spider-Man artist, that kind of like the height of his powers.
Uh-huh.
My favorite part is when he's on the run. When he leaves, right? I know a lot of other people have vitriol for some of those things, but this section of the John Romita Jr. and JMS, John Michael Straczynski, it's good stuff. Anyways, Moreland is like this vampire-like character who has this you don't understand why there's this obsession with Peter Parker and why he's so bent on getting to him. And there's this person who you don't know who he is, where he's from, why he's got similar powers to Peter, and he's trying to be like some sort of mentor to him. You wonder if it's Peter from the future. It's really interesting and intriguing because the story becomes Spider-Man just getting the crap beat out of him and fighting every inch of his life to stop this monster who just seems unstoppable.
Uh-huh.
And it's a page turner. It's got some really classic Spider-Man moments. It really captures the character. It gets into the whole idea of Spider-Man being, all his villains are also animal-based characters. There's all this totem stuff.
Yeah.
So it makes you think of like, what really is going on with Spider-Man? I thought he was just bitten by a spider. This is fate. And this is, the web of life. And, yeah, there's like this destiny aspect to it. And of course, I don't know if it's on a list later, but a really fun, great event that everybody now in the world is aware of, the Spider-Verse. This is kind of like the seeds of what becomes the Spider-Verse later in a way. So I think it's a pretty key story for a villain that isn't often used, but I find it to be a very like page turner type of story. Great place to start reading Spider-Man if you just have a peripheral view of the character.
Uh-huh.
That's my pick.
It's a really good one. Yeah, Coming Home. I forgot it was called that. Because, yeah, it does introduce him. I mean, like, in theory, it's the build-up to Spider-Man The Other event, which was part of the JMS.
I didn't get that far. I think I stopped right before that begins.
It's not a great crossover event, so it kind of feels like, oh, that was a really good intro to what? So when Dan Slott followed it up with Spider-Verse, it really kind of gave him a bit more purpose. So yeah, I mean, if you were to read this and then read Spider-Verse, you'd be treating yourself because that's a really good combination. So the Coming Home introduces Morlan, and then, years later, it kind of shows what his origins are and what he is and where he's from. Because we didn't really have that nailed down for a long time. Because he's dressed kind of Victorian or something as well, isn't he?
Yeah, it's just he's got this sidekick who's just like a dumb crony, but you're kind of creeped out by him yourself. It's just this guy who he talks to. Yeah, I don't know his name, but it's this knockdown drag. It's kind of like the death of Superman in fighting terms. Like he's left with nothing. What's so funny?
I think there's a big. I really don't want to spoil it, but I think that one of the turning points from this fight as well is not just the fight itself, and there's a bit of a shocker.
Yes, exactly. So it's a book that if you want to get into Spider-Man or see like what's good about Spider-Man as a character, if you start here, once you get to the end of this story, you're going to want to read the next story.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. It was a really good era.
Yes. And not too long after that, it's we don't got to get into the whole run, but it's a significant period of time in Spider-Man's life because there's a really grand story taking place with Peter and his cast of characters, and then 9/11 happens in real time.
Oh God, yeah.
And there's an issue that's right. I think it's right after this storyline.
Yeah.
So the cliffhanger, which is one of the biggest cliffhangers in like Spider-Man in Marvel, right?
Yeah.
You could imagine, is interrupted by one of the most historic moments in our modern era of history, and it's a story about the Twin Towers 9/11 tribute issue, and Spider-Man and the entire Marvel universe affected by it. Like
Yeah.
it's an incredible time in a way
Yeah, I
for a
remember that had
Spider-Man
the
event.
full black cover, didn't it?
Yeah,
It was just the
incredible.
title in white outline,
Yep.
36, and then it was just a black cover, and it was yeah. Because I don't think they announced they were going to do that. I
No,
think
I
it
think it
just
was
kind of
like a last
happened.
minute. Yeah, and John Romita Jr. just went back to the drawing table and knocked out an issue like in no time.
It's
So,
lucky he's fast.
right?
Yeah.
No kidding. So that's my number one pick. Dave,
Cool.
take it away.
Nice surprising choice actually. That did catch me a little off the guards. I'm gonna pick kind of a random villain for my first, and it's probably one that a lot of people just go, "What?" Because he's kind of so. In the 70s, they had their ongoing saga with the Green Goblin for quite a long time. And then in the mid 70s, early mid 70s, there's that climactic battle, and Gwen Stacy, what happens to her, and then it's like the end of the Green Goblin, and they kind of needed a new Green Goblin, so they essentially introduced a new. He's a goblin, but he's not called a goblin. He's the Jackal.
Ah,
I just find him so weird. He's not my weird choice, but I find him so weird. And for some reason, it's like I remember him coming back again during so that the storyline they started basically was like him hiring the Punisher, and because the Punisher was kind of going as an assassin at that initial first appearance, and it all builds up to the original Clone Saga where Spider-Man fights a version of himself. Then he kind of comes back during the Clone Saga, and even though the Clone Saga has its low points, there are some bits I think are quite good fun.
yeah, there is definitely.
But for me,
Ooh, I'm
put it
interested.
right at the bottom.
What? Say that again.
I put it right at the bottom, like instead of
at
on
the
the
bottom.
top.
Okay.
Not up my
Okay.
bottom. It's Spider Island,
Nice.
which
I
is
wanted to pick that. I'm so happy you did.
oh,
Yes.
God, did I steal it? Did I steal
No,
it?
you didn't. You didn't. You didn't. You know why? Because I couldn't remember who the villain was in that book. I just remembered I loved the story.
It's funny, isn't it? Because like he's not kind of in a weird way not memorable. I love it when he turns up because I just think like, what are we gonna get? What's gonna happen now? Is it gonna be clone based? Is it gonna be weird? And he teams up with another villain in the story who's also very not even second tier. She's like fifth tier, who appeared during Avengers Disassembled and introduced Spider-Man's organic web shooters. So to line up with
Okay.
the films, they introduced a character called the Queen,
Yeah.
who turned him into a giant spider. And
Okay,
then when
yeah,
he
yeah,
returned to human form, he could shoot webs out of his wrists.
Okay.
Whoopsie. So anyway, in this one they both team up, but
Stupid.
the Jackal is turning people into everyone on Manhattan into spider people.
So fun. So much fun.
It's Dan Slott. It's just ridiculous. It's Dan Slott, and I've said this a number of times, but he nails the Spider-Man events. Like when he does an event in the period that I've read of his Spider-Man, he nails it. So
Yeah, he
this
did.
is just really good fun. It's kind of silly. It's the kind of stuff as well like you can only do in comics, I think. The Jackal is a bit of a weird one. He's essentially a bloke dressed up fully in green with a face mask that's kind of grotesque with big ears. Like it just sounds crap, and it is crap. But sometimes he wears a coat.
What's his alter ego's name?
Dr. Miles Warren.
That's it.
Yeah, so there's this whole thing as well with Spider-Man where like everyone he knows has a costumed identity or is married to someone with a costumed identity. So like it's his college professor, I think. He was teaching Gwen and Peter, and then he became obsessed with Gwen, and then he cloned Gwen.
I love that
cloned
about
Peter.
Spider-Man, though. I think that's the thing that everyone like. His world is he's in New York City, which is a small place with such a big city, but really in a small condensed place. And his world is so big but so small at the same time.
Yeah.
And it makes his paranoia and his doubt in himself so much more like valid because it's like everyone close to me is either gonna die or turn
Or
on
try
me.
and kill me.
Yeah.
It's like that bit. Do you know the bit in the Tobey Maguire film where he's going like, "What's that on your head?" It's like he's got a cut. Bike messenger knocked me down. Like, oh, you're Spider-Man.
Mm,
What?
right? I know it, and yeah, it's so ridiculous, but at the same time, maybe that's what people relate to is like it's always close to you,
Yeah.
right?
Well, it stems from, so originally the Green Goblin, Steve Ditko didn't want it to be anyone he knew, so he did the character in shadow, and then he wanted it to be just, you know what, it's just some dude. And apparently Stan Lee was going like, no, it needs to be someone he knows, or there's no reveal. And like on that case, like he was right, and that was the falling out. That's why Ditko left. So
It was the right choice.
it was the right choice. Totally, I totally agree with it.
Especially if you put them in the shadows, right? The only reason you put someone in the shadows and refuse to acknowledge who they are under a mask, it's because there's a reveal. It's going to,
It's got to be a reveal,
no.
or unless you
Right.
make it part of some grander conspiracy, like, you know, the whole Secret Empire thing and the reveal from that in Captain America, like the original '70s Secret
Right.
Empire. It's not a character they know, but it's a central public figure. So
Right.
there's got to be a thing. There was no thing. It was just going to be, oh, it's a crazy person under the mask.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
that wouldn't cut it. That wouldn't cut it.
So instead, it's like his best friend's dad. So like,
And
that's
that
the
was
thing.
plausible.
Yeah.
In that regard,
we
it
buy
was
that.
plausible because of who Norman Osborn was.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It kind of made sense.
And they kind of continued that as a tradition, I think, like going forward. So it's all been these, there's a character and there's a big reveal. So, I mean, after the Jackal, I won't go into this now actually, but after the Jackal, there was another villain with another reveal. And it's like, it's quite a Spider-Man tradition. So, like, not doing it would suck. So
Yeah.
I don't care if it's the same story over and over again.
No,
Like,
no.
it's fun. Like, I want
That's the
to
thing.
guess who it is.
Yeah, it's Spider-Man is that comfort food comic.
Yeah, totally.
When you don't know what to read and you're kind of like scratching your head, you can't go wrong just by picking up Spider-Man and getting engaged in a fun story that will either make you feel emotional, feel excited, whatever it might be. It'll get you through.
Just feel entertained.
Yeah, exactly. It's popcorn.
It's popcorn.
Sometimes you just need the popcorn. Yeah. Good pick. Once we pick a villain, is he off the table?
No.
check.
You've got, if we both have the same bad guy at any point, we just have to hope we don't have the same story.
Okay, fair enough. So I'm going to stay with the Jackal. He was on my list. Right? And I'm like, I got a couple weird picks, but I guess not. We're showing the Jackal some love. So
That's the last thing I expected.
well, this is what I was trying to be. I didn't want to be obvious because there are some that you just like, we can do whole episodes about certain stories.
Yeah.
But then there's also the classic ones that sometimes like, well, that's kind of a dumb villain, but you're like, but you know what? It's a good story. And it's a good place to start in Spider-Man lore. So I got the original Clone Saga. I don't know how you feel about it.
Yeah.
I've got
a soft
two
spot for
copies.
it.
I got this with Clone Genesis, which was like the original trade of it. I found it at a Comic-Con for real cheap.
Jeez. What? So
Yeah.
is it the same number of issues?
No. This one here, I have this one because, again, I found it for real cheap. And I love the original Clone Saga. But this also has all of the... if you guys and gals, peoples, find this copy, it's a pretty good starter kit, or in regards to the villain we're talking about. It also collects the Spectacular Spider-Man stuff, which revisits some of the storylines that begin here. So it does like it gets Spectacular Spider-Man, the Amazing Spider-Man stuff from the original Clone Saga, and things that take place later on, I think in some giant-sized, and I don't know if you remember what I'm talking about, but it's about a 500-pager.
Yeah, there's like giant-sized man, not giant-sized man thing. There is a giant-sized Spider-Man with man thing in it. I
Yes.
think. And then there's like callbacks to... No, I'm not going to get into the callbacks.
Yeah.
They expand on that story later in a lizard story randomly.
Yeah, this collects the original story from Amazing Spider-Man 139 to 150, which was Jerry Conway, and I think Ross Andrew was drawing it.
Sounds right.
And then it also gets to the Spectacular Spider-Man issues 25 to 31, which is like early stuff. And then...
That's carrying, isn't it?
Yeah. And then 162, 163, which I think is also carrying. So
yeah,
I'm going with the Jackal. I wasn't sure if I should go with the Jackal or with the Clone.
Oh.
But I'm going to go with the Jackal because he's masterminding all of these things that ultimately lead to Peter fighting himself. Right. Well, the debate is up. Is it Ben or is it Peter? Even till now, because it became just an editorial mishmash of stuff.
Yeah.
But knowing what Peter had gone through, so the precursor to these stories, this is the first time Jerry Conway was writing the character in the 70s, like you mentioned before. It was nice that you brought this up and that we have different picks regarding the same character. But we all know Gwen Stacy dies at the hands of the Green Goblin, right? Yeah. That's no spoilers there.
No,
if you know anything about Spider-Man.
Well, they've even done it in a film now, so.
Yeah, it's done everywhere.
Yeah.
So that happens to Peter. It leaves him distraught till now. It's always something that is a sticking point with him because this is a character built off of as many times he saves the day, he also is the character that will lose.
Yeah.
Right? He has to. That's the feature of the character. And him losing the damsel in distress is just not what a superhero does.
No.
They'll let the world burn to save this damsel in distress. But in this case, he doesn't even know if it was his fault. Like he has that. And now he sees a clone, or maybe not, of Gwen. She's alive. Why? Why is she around? So it's the torture aspect that Peter goes through. And then also to have to fight himself.
Yeah.
Like a carbon copy of himself. While he is seeing potentially the woman of the love of his life. Back, resurrected or not. And then he's got to deal with his biggest enemy, which has always kind of been Peter.
Yeah.
Right? So the Jackal it's the cerebral aspect of him plotting and having such a bone to pick with a person that he goes to all this trouble to just exact his revenge. I'm not sure on what, but his obsession with Gwen, like it's an interesting soap opera.
Yeah, it's funny. Years later, they tried to explain how a college professor could clone people in vats. But I mean, that's the thing. Like years ago, Grant Morrison, and this came up in our Discord, and I think we forgot to put the link to the Discord. We'll put the link to the Discord in the comments in the promo for this this time around when we post it on the website. But they revealed it in Scarlet Spider Unlimited #1, how he could clone people. Was basically he was kind of pallying with the High Evolutionary.
Right.
And I think they've even unpicked that since as well. So, but like, do you know what? Just don't try and explain it. Like, it's fine. It's a college professor that can clone people. Fine. Just deal with it. There's
comic books.
There's weirder things than that. So
yeah, the girlfriend died by being thrown off the Brooklyn Bridge.
By a dude dressed as a goblin on a glider.
Yeah, like we're in. We get it. This is ridiculous. He got bit by a radioactive spider.
He got bitten by a spider. The spider would be dead within seconds.
Yeah, once you're worried about all the other stuff, like, are you in or are you not?
Yeah.
So yeah, I like the psychological aspect of this story. Sort of the things you can get into Peter's, like I said, his psyche, the torture, and ultimately him coming to peace and moving on. Like it allows him to now get to the next step. So, yeah, the Jackal isn't your top tier villain that you think of, but he is the culprit of, for better or for worse, some of the most nostalgically loved Spider-Man tales.
This is true.
So shout out to the Jackal. That's what we're going to name this one.
Here's a drink to the Jackal.
Miles Warren.
There you go. There he is. Okay, nice. We both jackaled it. So whatever that means. That sounds like an Urban Dictionary
thing.
Come
for the comics, stay for the jackal.
Stay for the jackling. So here's my obvious. Right, I'm just going to get my obvious pick out of the way.
Do it.
Okay, so it's from this beast, which is the Spider-Man by Roger Stern omnibus. I got myself an eyeball. And it's funny enough, it's the story that came up in a previous Speakeasy episode, I think. But it's the two-parter where Spider-Man fights someone who's not a regular Spidey villain. That's what made it kind of interesting. It was someone way out of his league. Was it? Oh,
it's a good one, man.
Dude, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Spider-Man versus Juggernaut. So he's fought the Juggernaut a few times, but this was the first time. I mean, Juggernaut's gone up against the entire team of X-Men, and he's been pretty tough for them to put down. He's unstoppable. Like, he's a dude that's powered by a gem. Again, this is the ridiculousness of old school comic. He found a gem in a temple somewhere or other in the jungle, and it gave him these abilities that made him unstoppable because he's hooked into one of the, what do you call them? They're like magical representatives or something.
The crystals,
no, like the, you know, the magical beings that Doctor Strange calls upon. So it's Sitarak.
Okay.
Sitarak. Sitarak, I think. I don't know.
Okay.
But yeah, so it's the magical crimson gem of Sitarak. So that powered him up, made him the Juggernaut. For some reason, it gave him armor. He named himself after a truck. That's a reference to really old school magical things, isn't it?
I always thought it was. I didn't know that his power came that, like, it was such a deep cut. I knew he was a mutant.
No, he's not.
He's not.
No.
But isn't he related?
He's related. Well, no, he's like, but not by blood to Professor X. He's his stepbrother.
Stepbrother. Okay.
Yeah. So he used to beat him and stuff. He was bigger than him and everything.
Everybody's related. All these villains always have to be related to somebody,
especially X-Men,
right?
And Spider-Man and everyone else. But yeah, he's a big fella, and he's fought the Hulk, and he's fought the Rhino, and he's fought everyone big, and he normally fights teams. So on this occasion, he fights Spider-Man. So I don't know what his actual strength level is off the top of my head. Do you think I'd know that shit? But it's like 80. Probably do 80 tons. I don't know, maybe. But like the official handbook of the Marvel Universe, man, it'll be in there.
It's
but
true.
Spider-Man's like 10. He can lift 10 tons. So he's out of his strength class completely. And he's a scrawny dude that jumps around and shoots webs out of his wrists. How is he going to beat this guy? And I think he's actually, the Juggernaut is I can't remember if he's paid. I think he's paid to kill Madam Web, who's she's basically, she can predict the future, so she knows he's going to try and kill him, so she gets Spider-Man. So I think it introduces her in that story, and I think she comes along a little earlier maybe. Anyway, it's not about her.
I think Denny O'Neil wrote her first. I think could like in the 210s to 220s. I feel like that was where she showed up.
I think you're right.
And this is what, 229, 230.
Yeah, I think so.
These issues, classic covers. Like, well,
it's
iconic
John
covers.
Romita Jr. again, but like young John Romita Jr.
Yeah,
it's 229 to 230 of Amazing Spider-Man. You're right. It's just a 2-issue thing. When you consider like what a big clash that would be nowadays, that'd probably be a 6-issue storyline. The way that they tend to expand these things, or like at least 4. But yeah, just a 2-parter, and he's got to try and stop the Juggernaut, and he's
always listed at the top in the top 10 very often.
Yeah, and like the cover's really cool as well. Both the covers are cool, but especially the second one. There's something that's really trippy looking second cover that zooms in on the Juggernaut's face. It's massive, and it's just Spider-Man's ass. Like it's like an upward shot of his testicular area. But
his bollocks.
His bollocks.
Yes.
So yeah,
great pick. I had it on my list. You got to mention that one, and it's true because it's not a typical Spidey villain, but it's one of the most famous stories of the character, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, what they have, just in case you've picked a similar one, they have clashed a few times since. I'm not going to talk necessarily about any of those or give any detail, but the fact that even though they have clashed again since, it's very rare that they do, so it makes it quite special. But like he's not really considered a Spider-Man villain, but it's an event when the Juggernaut turns up.
Absolutely, good pick. It'd be hard. It could be a little bit expensive to buy those single issues, like not completely out of price range, but there are cheaper ways to read it. That's all I'm saying. So look for it, definitely, and it's worth the read. It's a definitely fun story. Oh yeah.
If you can get it, there's a lot of great stories in the...
Cheers.
Hey!
Great book. Yeah, I forgot. My wife always tells me, if you're going to cheers somebody, you better drink it.
Now we're going to drink books. It's weird.
Nice pick. Should we go for 3?
Let's do it.
Should I go weird? or should I go? Can't
Go on.
unlock my phone for some reason.
Should we
Um,
still?
I wanna follow suit with you in a way, but I'm gonna deviate a little bit. I'm gonna go with my ultimate Spider-Man pick.
I want to know what it is.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious. You guess. Guess what you think it is. Which story or
Craven the
character?
Hunter.
No. Good pick though. Good pick. I'm gonna go with a very obvious Spider-Man villain that a lot of people love this villain because they think, oh, it's the best one, and
Venom.
that's Venom. Venom. Yeah. I'm not crazy huge fan of like Spider-Man 300, 301. It's good. It introduces a new character. He's terrifying, but it's kind of like I think the Juggernaut story is something more worth reading. There's this thing about Spider-Man 300. It's I guess Todd McFarlane and
Yeah.
it's Venom, right? People love this character, and he's cool. It's like Arnold Schwarzenegger with the symbiote on him,
Yeah, and a
right?
grin, and it's not fanged either. It's
No, it's just
toothy. I
yeah,
like those
yeah.
issues.
They're good.
I got a
They're
soft
really
spot.
good. And I like the character of Venom because you're just like this is the guy that Spider-Man is afraid of. He's got all his powers, and it's like more than just a clone. This guy's got a vendetta, and so does the alien
And he knows
attached.
the alien and the guy know who he is.
Right. And Spider-Man villains tend to figure out who he is nowadays, or even back then, where Norman Osborn figured it out. But it was only when he was going through an episode, right? But in the Ultimate Universe, which is my pick, and I don't remember which issues they are. I think they're like within the 30s,
Yeah, it's about
something around there.
33 to 36 or so, 38, 37.
Something like that. Which
Let me check while you're.
in comic book publishing, um, that's 3 years plus in to a run of a character that everybody knows and loves, right?
Mhm.
You would think that they would probably go for that low-hanging fruit way sooner because it's Venom and you can just do that whenever you feel like. But they waited for it, and I like that they gave Eddie Brock and this younger version of Peter Parker. They were bosom buddies. Their fathers were best friends, and there's a conspiracy. There's a conspiracy, deeper conspiracy that ties their families together, that that puts them at odds with this whole Venom thing. And I found that the relationship building that is done within this story makes you more invested. For me, I felt more invested in this, excuse me, Spider-Man versus Venom situation. And it made you feel a little bit more. The other one made you feel scared and like, wow, this guy's got Eddie Brock really hates him for some petty stuff.
Yeah.
But in this one, it's like, oh, this goes deep. This is a real deep issue that is making Peter learn things about his father or about
Yeah.
different aspects of his history. So I don't remember the story super super fresh, but I do remember when it comes to Venom, that was a version of it that I'm like, maybe that was good. Like that makes me kind of feel a little bit more. There's a little bit more meat on the bone to it for me
Uh-huh.
when it comes to a Venom story. So for Venom, if people want to read my recommendation, I would go with Ultimate Spider-Man somewhere with it.
33 to 38.
You got it.
Yeah.
You were right. Thank you, sir.
No worries. It's a good choice, actually. And it's funny because I remember, I think I was probably most familiar with that version of the character playing the Ultimate Spider-Man game, where you have to chase him and you get to play as him for a bit as well.
That's right. Yes,
Yeah.
I remember that on Xbox. I love that game. Yeah.
That was cool. There's a point, it's one of those games as well where you have to chase somebody, and if you get too far away, it's like, you failed. Like, screw you.
It was the best Spider-Man game I had played up until they did the Amazing Spider-Man on
I've never played
PS4. That one's tremendous.
I
And I
really
think
want it.
Dan Slott had some writing involvement in it.
Did he?
Yeah, it's a different version of Spider-Man in the sense where it's not in any sort of continuity
own
with movie.
continuity,
It's
isn't
its own continuity, but it's still like they got it. And the differences of suits that you get to try on, you can wear the Ben Reilly suit the whole game.
I'm going shopping. I'll see you later.
Yeah, it's
I'm going to
a
play
ton of fun.
PlayStation whatever, 7,
Or it was
whatever
a
it
ton of
is.
fun. But the ultimate one, because it was so interconnected with the comic, and I was reading the trades at that time.
Yeah.
I was behind, and I was catching up as the trades were. So I had like 15, 16 volumes of Ultimate Spider-Man that I could read and play the game at the same time. So I was all in.
Well, they kind of made it part of the continuity. So it
Right.
introduced the Beetle for the first time, like the ultimate version of the Beetle, and then he appears later in the series.
Yes.
I can't remember
Yes.
if they stuck with that or not, but essentially it's meant to be part of continuity. They even emulate one of the scenes with Wolverine. She has to fight Wolverine as Venom, I think, as well.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, so he didn't even have the white spider. He's not an alien. It's not an alien costume.
No.
It's a very different origin, and that's the thing with Venom. It's like, how do you do Venom if you're not going to have Secret Wars
Right.
and not
Exactly.
going to have the Sin Eater story? So like Bendis had to, and it's Bendis. I know some people are funny about Bendis, but Ultimate
Well, I think
Spider-Man was amazing. No
I
pun
think
intended.
yeah, I think this is him at the height of his powers in many ways.
Yeah, no,
Where
definitely.
his reputation, like what's the big deal about Brian Michael Bendis? Because he did Ultimate Spider-Man.
He did,
That's one of the reasons.
and it was
And
awesome.
it was very good. Another great starting point for anybody who wants to get into Spider-Man. Just try Ultimate Spider-Man
Cool.
and keep going. There you
Yeah,
go.
I definitely keep going. Start from the beginning, keep going
Yes.
until 156
Yeah.
or whatever it was.
You know what I also forget to do, which we should do now,
What?
is if you guys are still watching on Twitch, YouTube, rate and review the show, and also press that subscribe button. That helps a lot. Stick
Yes.
with us.
Yes, good shout.
I should always say that at the beginning, but if you're still with us, subscribe.
Oh, the other thing was, if anyone has checking out the website at the minute, all the usual stuff is there and being added. You may notice that it's changed a little bit. So there was some. I won't go into the issues. There's some technical issues behind the scenes. We're fixing them up to resolve them on a permanent basis. So if it does look a bit different, this is why.
What number are we on?
My number 3, I think.
Go for it.
Okay, now this is going to be not a cheat, but I'm picking a Spider-Man villain, but I'm not picking a Spider-Man story.
I like it.
So
Look who's got to be different.
every goddamn week, look who's got to be different. Oh, the English guy with the rock, paper, scissors, snakes, and the Queen. This is actually my favourite villain. He's got a bowl for a head. He's got eyes down his tits. It's Mysterio.
Nice.
I love
Nice
Mysterio.
pick.
I love Mysterio. The thing with Mysterio, though, is that you'll literally look through his stories and go, "Oh, these are shit," because they're just a bit weird. Like, but they're kind of like, okay, what's his goal? To confuse Spider-Man.
No, they're good.
For
He's a
what
good villain.
reason? My favourite Mysterio story is a bit of a controversial one. It's not necessarily where you want to start with Mysterio, but it's Guardian Devil from Daredevil. You can either call it Daredevil Volume 2 or Daredevil 1998 series by Kevin Smith and drawn by Joe Quesada. Beautiful moves. I have this version here, the Marvel Knights Omnibus. Marvel Knights by Joe Quesada. Why didn't they call it Marvel Knights Daredevil?
If that was a Daredevil Marvel Knights, I would have paid more attention to it.
Exactly. It was a really odd move. But yeah, that's the one that collects the stuff pre-Bendis, basically.
Nice.
From that Marvel Knights era. But it's an 8-parter, so it's quite a beast of a story, for an introductory thing. And technically I've already spoiled it to a degree because
Yes.
whoopsie. So yeah, you don't necessarily know who the villain is for the most part. Shit, I've just realised I've ruined it.
Dave.
But hey,
Welcome
do you
to
know
the
what?
club.
It's the journey, right? It's the journey.
No, absolutely. Because there's so much
There's
more.
more surprises to come in
There's
that
so
story.
much more. Yeah, it's so true. And again, it's not what happens, it's how it happens. Why it happens.
And
what's happening with the character.
It's the dialogue. The dialogue in the confrontation is what makes it so good. It's so good. And I love that. I've read that story so many times, and yet I always feel like I can't remember it as much as I want to. So I want to go back and read it again now. I
I
love it.
remember reading that for the first time a couple years ago, and it was very dialogue heavy, but you were very, because of the way Kevin Smith speaks and writes,
Yeah.
it's a lot of like you're interested in the conversation of it,
Yeah.
right? You're
Yeah.
completely dialed in. I didn't even care that there was that many word bubbles. I remember Joe Quesada had said to him, it's like, do you want to leave room for the art, or do you just want words on the page?
Whoops.
Because it was his,
I don't think it's that bad, is it?
I think he got better as like he started to pay more attention to allowing the art to breathe and for Joe Quesada to tell his story as well.
There are a lot of words.
Yeah, yeah. So, but that's a Kevin Smith thing. But
Yeah.
great. Yeah, it's a good pick. I didn't think of doing that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's fun. It's not. Let's say it's fun. It's pretty dark,
It's very dark.
but
It's very
I
dark.
really like that story. So, but some people don't like it. But screw you. It's fun. To each their own. I love it.
Screw you.
Screw you.
Okay. All right. Good pick. I like it. I'm down to 2. Man, I thought I would. I hate when I overthink it and then I'm down to 2 and I can't figure out what to pick anymore. So I'm gonna send a shout out. I've picked this before in Spider-Man conversations, but I'm gonna go with the James Mateus pick, and I'm gonna pick Spectacular Spider-Man 200, the Harry Osborn and Spider-Man conflict. Harry Osborn's taken over the role as the Goblin. It's been an ongoing storyline in Spectacular Spider-Man for I forget where it kind of the seeds are planted, but this is the culmination
Inferno,
of it all.
technically.
Yeah, yeah,
So it started before he even jumped on. Harry started going back to being the Goblin again during
Yeah.
Inferno in what 1989, 1988.
yeah. And again, another situation with Peter and those that are close to him that he loves and trusts and wants to just take care of them. They're cracking. Their families are scared. Peter just wants to salvage his friendships, but he also knows his life is on the line. And that when a person's got nothing but vengeance in them, or like his father is gone, right? Like this is a lost son, a lost boy who has an addiction problem, is insecure, and so he just goes back to he cracks again.
And he's got weird hair.
He's got weird hair. No one can understand how he has those waves.
It looks like you could put toast in it to hold it upright in the morning.
Right? I never understood that choice for their hairdo. That I never got.
No, it's like kind of sideways cornrows.
It really is.
Wait, what is it?
It's waves.
Is it?
It is.
What, like greased down really tight curls?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
I remember some of my friends were able to do that. Like they would wear the do-rag and it would make their hair have this nice smooth wave to it. Like the
It's meant
Osborns
to be
have.
like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something that takes a lot of work. It's not just something that you just have. That's why it was a weird choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it requires work. So for both of them to just have the anyways, we're talking about cornrows on the Osborns.
I'd watch that program.
Yeah. The next Disney original.
Cornrows on the Osbournes, starring.
Oh man. But yeah, it's Jan DeMatteis is a masterful writer when it comes to, I mean, you guys know what I think of him already, but when it's the relationships and the psychological aspects and the metaphysics of it all, and I'm a fan of Sal Buscema's time on Spectacular Spider-Man during this era, Jerry Conway followed by JMD. I like his stuff because it's a little bit simpler than what was happening in the Amazing Spider-Man story, where you had these big bombastic special effects artists like Todd McFarlane and Eric Larson. Like David Michelinie was just letting those guys, he was allowing them to shine.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
But in this case, this was more the artist and writer really sinking their teeth into some story, sometimes a little bit more I can't describe, how would I describe it? Street level,
Yeah,
more homey,
they were normally a
closer to
bit more
Peter's.
subtle. It was a bit weird because they had just before it, they had the story with Professor Power and the X-Men, which seemed quite big for that title.
That's true. That's true.
And
You're
then
right.
they brought it back down. Maybe that was the point, to kind of go like, what? And then we're going to make it really personal again. Come
That's
on.
true. Yeah, you're right about that. But the culmination of what they were building up to with this one, it hits home, especially the last page. It's just silent. We know that there's silent issues, and it's always done to be somber or to really capture your attention. And obviously, this had a lot of dialogue, a lot of fight scene, but then at the very end, you with all the ridiculousness that is Spider-Man, the jackals and
What
the goblins.
ridiculousness? Is
Yeah,
there ridiculousness?
but when it really comes back down to earth and you get into the human, that thing. I mean, this guy just sitting on the shelf like it's a building. Um, you feel it. You can feel the weight of this relationship and what it means to both of them. And yeah, it's a good one. There's a lot of goblins. Norman Osborn's famously, known as the Green Goblin, but for a time, like Harry and Peter, like there's something there that they've never properly. If they wanted to do it in the movies, when they tried it, it was horrible.
Oh God, I forgot about that. I think I blocked it out.
Yeah,
What was
it was
that?
horrible. Yeah, it was nonsense. But this makes you say maybe the Harry Osborn and Peter Parker situation. It hurts even more.
Yeah, it's a very different dynamic
Yeah,
between the two.
yeah, and you can't help but like feel for them, for both of them, for everybody involved. You can't help but feel for all of them.
Yeah.
So it's weighty, but JMD, I had to shout him out, and I think that's one of those. He's got a lot, but that's one of those ones that's a little bit more. I don't know. I think his more famous ones can sometimes be like too much of a first shot at Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
I did consider that one, but like, no.
Me too, but everyone knows it.
Yeah.
Right. And we can mention it in the alternatives. We're not saying it because we don't acknowledge it. It's just
We may do another time, but yeah.
yeah. Might even be a book of the month club.
Maybe. Oh my
Maybe.
God, that's a hefty beast of a.
And I know,
But deserving.
right? Your turn. You're 4.
Okay. Numero cuartero is. I'm trying to figure out which of my last two I'm going to go with. So okay, I'm gonna go with. I'm gonna delve back into this one again before I give you my number 5, where people go, "What?" So it's a little more obvious, but back on this cover again. Oh, who's that guy? Who's that guy on the cover?
I'm
With
so happy you're
Spider-Man.
picking it. I'm so happy.
When I was a kid, let's drink. When I was a kid, they released Secret Wars figures, and that's part of what got me into comics. Was wanted to buy the toys. There was like the Spider-Man is Amazing Friends cartoon, but they did the toys of this and did the Secret Wars series as well. But one of the toys was the Hobgoblin, and he wasn't in Secret Wars. But I loved this figure when I saw it. He's this orange and blue, wigged, kind of cackling looking, big red-eyed goblin. So he's not like the Green Goblin, who I always thought was a bit weird. I must admit, the look of the Green Goblin didn't work for me. And like, I'm fine with it now, but as a kid, I'd go like, that is the bad guy? He looks silly, and I'd be like 5. But the Hobgoblin, just the look, so it's that familiar look still, but they'd souped it up. So he had the hood on, and he's like really menacing, and he's hunched, but because he's got his bag with him, he's got more of a cape. And he's got that color scheme. There's something really menacing about him. It's the eyes, man. Those big red eyes, I think, really bring something to it. But what they did, this was now post Jackal. It's another who is the Hobgoblin, so who is the villain story.
Yes.
So they introduced him in Amazing Spider-Man 238. Good luck getting hold of that for cheap, especially with the tattoos insert. I managed to get hold of one. Did you as well?
Copy. I did, and I said, this got the tattoos in it, and I don't think it had the tattoos in it. I opened it up. Whatever.
Scumbags!
Yeah. Oh, well, but I have the issue, and I love the issue you're referring to. It's just beautiful cover.
Yeah, it's a great cover. It's classic
Iconic.
cover, tearing of the
Classic.
costume.
Classic.
And the reveal's really classic as well because he's got that pose. It's like a real official handbook of the Marvel Universe type pose. It's like that's the character. That's how you visualize him when you see the Hobgoblin. But it's not really a specific issue per se
No,
because
it's
it's like those
it's
initial appearances are kind of scattered. So it's 238, 239, I think. Then there's like Spectacular Spider-Man 85. There's Amazing Spider-Man. Was it 245-ish, 246, and then 249 to 251. So keep track of that. Make notes, yeah. It's something like I will double check this, but yeah, I'm off the top of my head. I'm pretty sure. I mean, like they've all the covers have got pumpkin bombs and hobgoblin. You
no, it
can't
was
go
a
wrong.
great time for Spidey fans. Great time for Spider-Man as a character. It was really, really rich with story. You were invested in all the subplots. You wanted to know who this Hobgoblin guy was and the villains that he was also messing around with. You were it just made good use of Spider-Man's world, but not using your typical villains all the time. Like again, you brought in the Juggernaut, and the one thing that Roger Stern really did like is the Vulture. He had
Yeah,
a soft spot for the
I
Vulture.
was close to that because of partly because of that run, because of that cover with the John Romita Jr. cover where his like the Spider-Man symbol is shining on the Vulture, and it's like he's got his wings up, and it just looks really cool. I love it.
Yeah.
The
Which
colors are
one is that?
horrendously garish, but I love that cover. But it's in that book. But basically, like I think if you rather than read those scattered
Oh
issues,
yes.
if you get Spectacular Spider-Man 85 chucked in the right place, I will provide a reading order at some stage, as soon as I can. Just read that Amazing Spider-Man run. I mean, things even if you don't manage to get hold of that Spectacular 85, it kind of doesn't matter even. But to read that run because it's not just his appearances that make it, it's all those other stories, and it's him trying to figure it out in those other stories because that's still an overarching threat for him. It's almost like in film example, it's like in the Avengers films where like Thanos shows up a little bit, or they're going like, we know this big thing's coming. It was kind of that vibe because even though he's fighting all these other villains, he's got this other threat to deal with. Like, who the hell is the Hobgoblin? Who is this guy under the mask? There was I don't want to spoil it, and I'm not going to ruin it in case anyone doesn't know, but there was a plan for it to be a certain character, and then Roger Stern left after 252, I think, and then it was revealed in 289 by a different writer, I think the reveal he gave was to piss off another editor, I think, or another writer on the series. He basically, it's very complicated and petty. And
Yeah,
it's
it
a
was
bit of
the
a
whole.
shame.
It is. They returned to it later to give you the whole.
Yeah,
They do a mini series, which was nice to have
Hobgoblin
that.
Lives 1 to 3.
Yeah, that was nice. But
Yeah,
it would have been. It's unfortunate that it had to be like. We'll tell you what it really was. Like it kind of
yeah.
lost a little bit of that
Because actually, by that
thing.
point, no one knew who that character was. Because of course, you've got to have the reveal, and it's got to be someone you know. But by that time, that character had stopped being a recurring cast member. So
Right.
it was an odd
Right.
time to do it.
It was not. It wasn't someone you were expecting or were heavily invested in, but it was kind of cool that it wasn't somebody that you were expecting.
If you guessed it, how?
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it helps if you read this book as well because it's got the Spectacular Spider-Man issues that Roger Stone wrote that lead in. But I don't want to say too much. Did he include the miniseries?
No.
Why didn't
No,
they
it doesn't.
include the miniseries in this?
I don't know. Not Amazing Spider-Man, I guess. I don't know. I have no idea. That's a really good question. They could have.
Yeah, makes sense. Oh well, they didn't. It is out there in other collections. There is a Hobgoblin Lives collection as well. But yeah, it's those initial appearances. Even though you don't necessarily get the reveal that was intended, is that the one? That's the one. That's the one.
That's the one.
Which has also got a few issues of Spectacular in it, I think, as well. Yeah, it's great. Just as a build up and a whole thing, and then there's like quite a climactic battle. It's not the end for that Hobgoblin saga, but that's the strongest period. And he's got a very different approach to the Green Goblin. The Green Goblin's intentions are quite crazy and focused on one thing, whereas the Hobgoblin's got a whole other agenda going on. So yeah, it's a very different approach. So.
It makes him as a threat because you don't know who he is, because you don't know what his agenda is, whereas Peter always knows what's the deal with Norman most of the time. With this one, it's like he's got his hands in everything.
Yeah. Connections all over the place. And
it's cool. It's
agenda.
Really cool.
Yeah.
I read a lot of that Roger Stern run in like the different trades that were collected and had like issues scattered. So I had like the Nothing Can Stop the Juggernaut trade, and I had the one that collected some of the issues with the Tarantula.
Oh yeah.
And Jekyll and Hyde, and then there was the Hobgoblin trade. It's just piecing little bits of it together, and I loved everything that I read. That I started to try to get issues within that series, and when they came out with the omnibus, it was just like, thank you. Jeez,
it's lovely stuff. The early 80s era Spider-Man is just like, it's like that comfy chair in it.
Number 5, shall we
God,
okay,
are you on number 5?
I'm on my number 5, but I'm gonna go this time with a super obvious one.
Go on.
Which is it's just great. Superior Spider-Man.
Yes.
Doc Ock becomes Spider-Man. That's who Superior Spider-Man is. That's not a spoiler. You go into the story, you need to know that, right?
It was at the time, and it was uproar at the time, but that was the hook. That was what they launched that new series based on. Dr. Octopus is now Spider-Man.
And the thing with Spider-Man, and for a while I would ask anybody who I interviewed if they had worked on Spider-Man and Batman. I would always ask them who they thought had the better rogues gallery, because everyone knows about Batman, and I'm like, I think Spider-Man's rogue gallery is more interesting in the sense of you don't know who his main adversary is. You really don't. With Batman, it's always going to be the Joker. No matter who is cooler, who's got more like personal vendetta. Like, I think Ra's al Ghul in Batman is a very interesting villain.
That's the point.
I think so, but it'll always be the Joker.
It's too established now.
It's too much to the point where I'm like, I'm so bored of it. But with Superior Spider-Man, if someone were to say, "Oh, Spider-Man's his version of the Joker is the Green Goblin," you'd be like, yes, that could be true. But is it really his greatest foe? Because there's an argument to be made that Dr. Octopus is.
Well, that's one of the great things about it as well. Is like he generationally, like 60s, early 70s, it would have been the Green Goblin, but people jumping on after that would be more familiar with Dr. Octopus as a regular. But there was also the Jackal, who didn't stick around that long, and then they had the Hobgoblin, who was kind of, and then they had Venom. But the one that was there through all those periods with all those guys, it was Dr. Octopus, who was who recurred the most, I think.
Right, and you bring up Venom, so there was all these like, if people know Spider-Man, they'll think of Venom as his main villain, Green Goblin, Hobgoblin, the Vulture at times.
Yeah.
But Dr. Octopus and Superior Spider-Man, Dan Slott's run, 33 issues or so. It's coming out in an omnibus. It's collected in trades. It's collected in hardcovers. You have to read this book. I'm going to say that. You got to read it because it's so different. It is very faithful to the Spider-Man mythology, but it's one of those things like you brought up before where you like, who really actually maintains the Batmobile? It makes you ask questions about Spider-Man like, why didn't you
never do that before?
Right. It does all of that the whole way through, and you're just like, he's a better Spider-Man. He's not a better Peter, like personally.
No. Well, no, that's true. It's funny as well because like when they relaunched these books, and they relaunched them, especially during that time, they were relaunching them a lot, but they would just put a different adjective on the front, but it didn't really mean anything. It was just, this time it's the fantabulous Thor, but does it mean anything? No. Superior Spider-Man was called Superior Spider-Man for a reason. He was going to prove that he was superior to Peter Parker as Spider-Man. So it really lived up to its name. Yeah.
I explained some of it to my wife when we were on vacation on one of the episodes we recorded while we were away, and because she's reading Dan Slott's Silver Surfer, and then
Oh
I
yeah.
realized, like, I kind of like a lot of the bits of Dan Slott that I've read. I like quite a bit of his work because I love his Spider-Man stuff. But Superior Spider-Man is like, and it spun off into Superior Foes of Spider-Man,
Mm-hmm.
which in it of itself is a really cool title.
Yeah.
But
There was
seeing
Avenging
Peter,
Spider-Man and
yeah,
Spider-Man Team Up, or is it Superior Spider-Man Team Up, or just
I'm not
Spider-Man?
sure.
I
I
can't
think so.
remember.
I think you're right. I think you're right. But it was rich with story. You were hooked in to seeing when someone snatches your body, literally, like it
Yeah.
was the switcheroo. But Peter wasn't in Dr. Octopus' body. His consciousness was like, in a way, you're like, how is he even going to come back
Uh huh.
from this? And you almost got to a point where you're like, oh, like,
I'm fine if he doesn't.
yeah, like Otto's interesting here. Like,
That's the thing. Was every scenario he'd really worked it out, because it's like, well, okay, well he's gonna interact with this character. How's that gonna work?
he's on
And
the
they did that.
Avengers.
He's on the Avengers. They had a cover with him kissing Mary Jane. People lost their shit. People went crazy about that. They're going like, this isn't okay. It's like, yeah, but that's what covers are designed to do. Hello? That's what they do. But some people as well were just going like, no, Peter Parker's Spider-Man. They've always been showing why Peter Parker is Spider-Man or whatever character by putting someone else in their position. It's a really long-running thing in comics, especially since the 80s. But this was, it just felt very different.
This was different.
And they
This was
really
so
gave
different.
it time, because you're thinking like, oh, they'll do 12 issues maybe, and that's quite a long time. Like, nope, still going.
Yeah.
That's
And
that's
I
2
remember
years still going.
I remember getting back into comics around the time when it happened, and I said, "Oh, at least I don't have to read Spider-Man. It's not Peter anymore." That's my attitude. I'm like, I don't want to read Doctor. Like, what is that? Like Death of Superman again? There's like Nightfall. Like, I've seen this trick before. Like, and I just kept hearing good things about it. Good
Yeah.
things about it. And I finally gave it a chance when the deluxe hardcover came out. I said, all right. All I hear is, like, decent things. Let me read it. I'm like, well, this is good. This is good. Really good stuff. And I wanted more. And when I got a chance to meet Dan Slott, he had told a story about how, like you're bringing up, people lost their minds, and he got death threats.
Oh God, he did, didn't he?
He had to go with security to signings because people were letting him know, I'm coming after you here. It was crazy for him. Like, he's a comic book writer. I don't know if you've ever seen Dan Slott in real life, but
yeah, he's this sweet little guy.
yeah, he
Like,
really is. Like, there's nothing to be threatened by him.
No, that's insane.
Yeah, and I got a chance to tell him, like, listen, you caught a lot of shit for that, but I wanted more. That's how good it was.
I would have taken another year at least.
Yeah, and what's cool about it is when there's things that happen in that story that have payoff later, when Dr. Octopus is no longer Spider-Man, surprise.
Shock.
But the legacy of what Doc Ock did is always going to be there.
Yeah. Especially as it shows he knows who was better.
Yes.
But
yes.
It's great. And actually, saying that about the extra, if they did an extra 12 issues, it's good that they didn't. They bowed out. They gave us more. They really put time into it, and then they bowed out before it overstayed its welcome. It's very well orchestrated.
Just in time for a movie to come out, and you put Peter back in the costume.
What are the odds?
I know. Surprise. That was my obvious one for this round. No, I had a couple good. I'm glad you picked.
I was thinking. I nearly chose it and didn't.
Yeah,
but there was a part of me going, God, I hope you choose it instead, because like.
Okay, good. All right, take it away.
Okay, final choice.
Let's do it. Final choice.
This is my left field weird choice. I'm going to end on weird, and it's everyone's absolute number one favorite Nazi made of bees. It's Swarm.
I don't know this one.
No?
No. I feel like I should.
Slightly obscure-ish character, but
sounds like it.
He's a Nazi made of bees.
So what issues are these? Why don't I remember this?
Well, he's originally a Champions villain. So basically, he's a scientist that he was investigating some weird occurrences somewhere or other, and then there's some bee activity, and the bees basically kill him, but he ends up entering their hive mind and taking over the bees, and they make his body. So he's a skeleton surrounded by bees with a hood on and some gloves. Because you don't want to get stung. So I love the weird ones, man. I love the weird villains. And this is probably as weird as you can get with the Spider-Man villain. So, he started as a Champions villain. The Champions didn't stick around that long. I think they did, 16, 17 issues in the 70s?
Mm-hmm.
So, where's he going to go next?
I'm looking up the Swarm. I have to see this.
Who do you have fighting a spider? The bee. It's logical.
Makes sense.
So
it makes sense.
My story pick for Swarm. Now look, I'll caveat this by saying they're not the best stories. So this is the thing with this. Let's bring on the bad guys, and we're trying to pick our bad guy and the story that we love him for. Now, I don't care how good or bad the story is. It's a Nazi made of bees. I'm reading it. So whenever he shows up, I'm like, yep, it's Swarm. I'm into it. So basically, my pick for the story, as an example, it's a very strangely written story, but it's from the Clone Saga period, and it is...
Should have known that.
Sensational Spider-Man 9 to 10, and Mike Wieringo artwork. So you've got Mike Wieringo, who is one of my favourite artists of all time. With Ben Reilly as Spider-Man, and I've got a soft spot for Ben Reilly as Spider-Man. Once all the weird up and down, isn't he a clone, had stopped, and they just made him Spider-Man, there were some nice stories in there, especially when they were just getting comfortable in those stories. And then,
I've never read it.
Yeah, this is the story just before Revelations, which ends the Clone Saga. So in that title, this is the final sensational Spider-Man story before they ended the Clone Saga. The clone period, whatever you want to call it. It's Mike Wieringo. It's just a ridiculous story. Like, his whole aim is to take over all the bees in the world, and he doesn't really reveal that until the second part. And you're going, what is his aim? I think I know what it is. And then he goes no, he's going to take over all the bees. Why? I don't care. It's a Nazi made of bees. This is the Marvel Universe equivalent of the monkey with the hat for me. I love it.
Yeah, we know how much.
If I can't get a monkey with a hat, I'll take a Nazi made of bees.
What about both?
What? Hang on. What? A hat made of monkeys? No, hang on.
A monkey made of
bees. A monkey made of Nazi bees with a hat.
With a hat. And a little magnifying glass.
I'm gonna have to go off air.
Did you see the toy?
Yeah. I didn't get it. I was categorically not buying toys. I don't know what it is. But this is the thing with Spider-Man. You get your classic characters, you'll get your rhinos, but Mysterio was weird, and Steve Ditko's whole thing was spindly, weird, odd things. When you think about Kraven, really, it's weird. It's a dude with a moustache dressed as a lion for no reason, and he wears tights and little ballet shoes, and then he just tries to throw a net over a man with spider powers so he can say he's better than him. It's weird. So
good.
Swarm is nothing compared to some of the stuff, but it's weird. And Hypno Hustler, who he plays guitar, and it just hypnotizes people.
Yeah, you win the award for the weird pick of the night, Dave. That's for sure.
Yes! That was the aim. I hate Swarm. I just wanted to have the weirdest pick. No, I don't. I love Swarm.
I know,
but I don't know why.
Yeah, I don't doubt it for a second. You have alternatives?
No, I had one, but where he didn't come up, I'm going to sit on it. I'm going to wait till we do another one of these one day.
Okay.
Have you? Or are you going to save yours?
I do, but if you're going to... I'll share one. This would have been my weird one. I was going to pick... Well, yeah, why not?
Do it.
I was going to pick the symbiote. not Venom, not Carnage, but the symbiote itself, because I really like the issues where he's introduced, the Tom DeFalco, Ron Frenz era that follows right after Roger Stern.
Yeah.
So I think it's
The post
issues.
Secret Wars period, isn't it?
Yes, yes, exactly. So he gets the black suit in 252,
Mm-hmm.
and throughout those issues, it's a pretty important time in the character's life because this collection here,
Oh man, I used to have that.
yeah.
I've got a different version. Is it here? No, it's over there somewhere.
But it ends. What's collected here, you know what's collected here. I think it ends at 259,
Yeah, it'd be
and
258, 259 probably.
something like that. Yeah, but those issues of him fighting his conscience and trying to get rid of the symbiote suit and the him having to go home with no clothes on except the Fantastic Four
And a bag on
outfit
his head.
and a bag on his head. When people cosplay as that, like
Yeah.
it's pretty pivotal, right? It's pretty pivotal. There's toys of it.
Well,
So
you
I
could
just
play as
felt
the
like,
Amazing Bagman in one of the
yeah, in the
90s
video
games.
games.
Yeah.
Or even in the one that came out for PS4.
No.
Yeah, yeah,
Why
you
am
could
I
wear
more
that.
excited about that now than I was before?
Yeah, yeah. And I think there's a one where it's just him in webbed up underwear and a mask, because like from Spider-Verse or something like that. I don't know if he
Yeah.
gets stuck wearing just his mask and no clothes,
I'd have to
but
see it. I can't
every
remember.
costume is in there. But that one is included, and it's just more than Venom. I feel the symbiote is the interesting aspect of it. It's the secret war. It comes from the Secret Wars.
Mm-hmm.
It's trying to take him over. It makes him stronger. He never has to worry about organic webbing again, or sorry, making webbing again.
Yeah.
Now it's somewhat organic, but it also gives him like edge, a dark edge. You're kind of, ooh, Spider-Man. Like,
Well, he's like really tired all the time as well, isn't he? Because it's like taking him for a spin and stuff.
yeah, it just wants to completely consume him. So I was gonna pick that as an option for a villain, but
I will say this then. I was talked out of it. I won't say by who. It's pretty obvious. My pick, my last pick was going to be Death.
from Infinity War,
No, so even though like Death is a character, but I was gonna
Yeah.
like there's so many deaths in Spider-Man, and then I
Oh,
was gonna
very
pick one of
interesting.
my favorite issues that deals with it. But I'm actually not going to pick that now, and I'll run that another day.
I think I know which issue. Yeah, I was thinking. I wasn't thinking of death, but I was thinking of moments like that,
Yeah,
and I'm like,
and I
man,
nearly picked the
sometimes
symbiote as well. I nearly did the same.
really
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah,
See,
I was very close because I had the trade. I've got a different version of it that's got the web issue, the Marvel Team Up issues and Spectacular Spider-Man issues in. And
yeah.
I nearly ran with it, but
There's a lot to go with. There's a lot to talk about when it comes to this guy, this character. I think he's got the best rogues gallery.
he's got
myself.
great road. Well, the thing, they're not just crazy people. There's all different motivations in there. And
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's hard to pick who his greatest foe is, which is what I like. That's what I
Yeah.
like about it. This was fun. Thank you for the idea. I enjoyed doing this and going through the library and reminding myself what I've read and thinking about reading them again. Always good.
Yeah.
Rate and review the show, everybody, on any podcast platform that you listen to us. YouTube, subscribe, send a comment, Twitch, subscribe, stick with us. We're having fun. We like doing this together, and we hope you're having fun with us as well. And of course, props to super producer Misha. Can't do it without her. Dave, any last things to remind people?
Nazi bees. You know it.
Omniversecomics.guide.
Oh, there's a website called omniversecomics.guide. Go there.
Thank you, everybody. Dave.
Nazi bees.
Take care, everybody. Talk to you soon.